Hi, welcome back to another Terranscapes video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the first building put together for the Elf Town, the first test build. So here's the test build. The building, as you may have noticed from the time-lapse video I showed, took me quite a while to assemble, and partly that was because there were some errors in the design, there were some errors in the assembly, and there were a few errors in the cutting, and those errors were due to me not really clearly labeling. For instance, the insert that would go into this window actually got cut out as a solid rather than as a disc, as a ring, I should say, because there's supposed to be a layer inside of here, and that's just me not organizing the files properly for Charlie, who's doing the cutting for me. You know, for instance, there should be a little window sill there, and there's a little piece that goes around this over here. So this is not a complete building in the sense that some parts were missing. Some parts I omitted by accident, like the stairs that go here. So when I assembled it, I had to figure out what was going on with all the parts. Some of the dimensions were a little off, so I had to do a little trimming on these uprights. I also learned that without going into any more of the detail about the assembly, I need to make directions for myself, at least in the order of operations. You know, which of these walls is on the, is this on the outside of this edge, or is this on the outside of this edge, if that makes sense. Looking at the building in a little bit more detail, what do I think worked out really well? First, I think the entry to the building just looks really great. I'm like super excited about how that came out. A lot of nice, interesting details, a lot of layers, right? So that was the effect I was going for. And so when you look head on to the building, especially when you look from a little above, you cannot see this. So I'm going to use a photo here to show you what floor looks like. And with the tiling of the floor and the image and the rails, I love it. I love it. I think it just came out really, really well. The couple problems, however, of course, is that I didn't really account for the length of these going around here. So this is why you're seeing some of these hodgepodge stitchings here where I was like, oh, I don't have the right parts. I didn't make this the right way, so I'm just going to glue it together and just make it work. The other thing that I liked was the changes that I made, actually. So this little outbuilding here, this actually did not have this roof come out as far, nor did it have these braces. And as I started to assemble it, I quickly realized that it needed to have a little more overhang to, bring it in line visually with the rest of the building and also make this little entryway a lot more interesting. And then when I was putting it together, I didn't have the sides, of course I didn't have the stairs at all for this, so I just put those in as a little placeholder, if you will, until I can get the proper stairs cut. Then it made me start thinking about detailing on the walls, and you'll see here that I've put in this little piece here. This isn't part of the original plan, but I had some of these cutouts that Charlie had sent me. Charlie's gentleman who's doing the laser cutting, and thank you so much, Charlie, for all of your help. And so I had some extra pieces, so I just tacked it on there just to see how it looked, and I like it. Here's why I like it. So the front of the building really is where, there's just a ton of detail, and in fact, here's where the stairs should be. Now they're a little low because this is sitting up on the turntable, but you can get a little bit of the idea. And there's a lot of visual interest between this and this. There's tons of stuff going on. And then as I started looking at the building, I realized that it is lacking some interest on the other walls. It doesn't really match that feel very well. And in the back, I have some more, braces here that I guess you might call them pilasters, but I don't know if they officially would fall into that category. And of course, my improper assembly, this should hang over this more. These are not supposed to be exposed like that. Directions. To blend it with that front entrance, I think some decorative scroll work on various spots are really I think needed for homogeneity across the piece, and also just really going to add a lot of interest. And the nice thing about it is those are not difficult to add. So I'm going to cobble together a few elements to stick in to some of these areas. One thing I should also mention before we talk about the dormers is that this will be finished with a stone facade, and right now I'm contemplating using the mold that I have put up as a part of the giveaway, the stone mold with the larger blocks. I'm going to see how those look once I pull a cast from that mold. They might be too rough, and the small brick wall mold, stone wall mold that I showed you might be too refined. I'm going to go with the large stone mold unless it really cries out to me that it's super, super wrong, because it's already assembled and it's a nice mold and all those reasons. Before I get into some of the really fine detail of what I learned, I just want to talk about the dormers real quick. The original design for the dormers was much larger than this. They actually came out quite a bit more, and they had a much heavier footprint. And I did a little research on dormers. I did a little research on a bunch of things on this. And what I learned, I actually went to a site about architecture, building your homes, how do you build dormers, and I realized I needed to shrink them up quite a bit. In fact, I don't know if you can see it in the light, but this is the original glue line where the dormer actually came out to, right? So you can imagine how much heavier that was visually and coming out. So I shrunk them and pushed them back, so I have to redesign just by making it smaller, the sills that sit under here. But overall, I feel like the size they're at right now works pretty well. I like it. And I've made a template of the actual roof of the dormer because it does have a curve, and my original design for it didn't fit at all, but I basically recut this and then made a template of that so that I could use that to guide myself in designing the actual pieces to be cut for the finished buildings. And before I get into the minutia, literally the minutia, just want to talk a little bit about these roof shingles. These were some shingles that Charlie supplied me. He had cut those as examples. The great thing about it was that I was able to tile a section of the roof, get a feel for A, how much work was that? A little bit. B, what does that tile size look like? And, even in here, I'll need to run like a little gutter runner or something, underneath the tiles to make this transition look more natural. However, the shape that you're seeing is not the final shape, and it's an interesting element of the tiles. So these are all cut with, oh God, I'm not going to go get it. I'm trying to be quicker. And actually, I think I have a photo here I'll show you that you can see what the tile strip looks like without being stacked. And so the way they're cut, it allowed me to try a different arrangement where I actually pulled them back more, and that exposed more of each individual shingle. And I don't like this pattern at all. But wow, how versatile this little pattern is, because if I had pushed them way down, then you'd have a much smaller shingle with a much different feel. So I'm going to play around with that and see what kinds of patterns I like, and also give a little more thought as to how to finish this edge. One thing that I don't have, but I just did a bunch of research on, and in fact, I put up a bunch of these photos for my patrons in my patron photo reference library, is that the roof rake of a building, is this too much? And so in Asian buildings, which I'm drawing a fairly heavy influence from, they actually can have a pretty substantial roof rake, which is the overhang from the edge of the building, right, coming out. So I felt good about that. I was a little worried I had too much. I like it, but I was, I want it to be within the reasonable expectation of the eye, shall we say. However, in fact, I guess I will turn this up. So right now, these are fixed right to the wall, and when I was looking, I realized that all the roofs that have these large rakes over the edge of the building, there's rafters that run out, right, to give that some support. So I'll need to create those obviously, to give it some support. But still, how to finish this edge? I am not fond of this very pointed ending here. And I suppose I could just trim them flat and then, have it tile up from there, and sort of the way I've done it here. But this, I don't know. I'm not going to go into the tiling more except to say that this is not exactly what I envisioned, and I'm glad I did this test to see why it doesn't work for me. How's that? The other things that I noticed when I was doing roof studying and gables was looking at the cornices, the trim that can go underneath the roof line, and that's actually pretty important for me to add, partly because it hides the edge of a roof, and that's always been sort of a problem with roofs that I've made in the past, as well as many that I've seen, is you get this unfinished edge and it never looks right. So a little tiny strip that I will be putting together that will have a layering similar to the two floors here will bridge that visually, and also give a nice framing for the inside gable trim. Can I just say I really liked how the gable trim came out. I love how the railings came out. Man, I was worried about these, and I think they look great. So that was a huge sort of proof of concept piece, and there's other pieces that are built on a similar style, so I know they're going to look good when they're done as well. And the door, I thought, looked really good as well, and I really liked how these windows came out. The framing of the interior, openings, just has a nice sense of depth, and just, I really felt good about the front of this building. Really, really liked it. Now, let's talk about some of the problems, the minutiae in some sense. When I planned these rails, the railing sections here to come around the corner, they aren't supposed to come around this far. Hey, pointer stick, trying to make a run for it. You will not escape. And so you can see, even though this isn't matching up exactly, that there's a problem there. That's a small problem. I don't want to say it's a huge one, but I can't change the dimensions of these rails. If I try to change them, it will distort the pattern and it doesn't look right. So in order to use them, I have to change this. and that's not impossible. I can bring this out, but it was unfortunate. I didn't really expect this, and I need to go back and take a look at why this happened and how that affects all of the other circular flooring sections that I've created, and the railings that go on top of that. This was a surprise, and is probably the biggest problem with the construction design. Everything else is fairly minor, but that one this is a moderately problematic thing to fix. It can be fixed, but that stuff can take time for me. And the reason I know it will take a little bit of time is because I spent several hours actually deconstructing exactly went wrong with all of the fittings for all of the sections of the building. What do I mean by that? So the first thing to notice is the staircase. Now I'm missing, actually, there's a little outside trim piece that actually frames this. That was one of the ones I didn't specify clearly, and so it got cut out as a solid piece. So that's a quick fix. The frame doesn't add any height to these. It's exactly the same size. The stairs obviously are coming too high. They are supposed to sit either just a little bit at or a little bit below these actually. So these I can stretch a little and not distort too much because I don't need to make a big adjustment actually in terms of distorting the pattern. But what I discovered is that the 1/32 plywood is not 1/32 plywood. It's not 0.03, it's a little bit thicker. And that stacking caused it to gain enough height to be a problem. So in fact, I measured all of this. I measured a whole bunch of this stuff with my digital calipers so I could get down to the, the hundredths or the thousandths of an inch, because that's the level of detail that's causing these kinds of problems. How does that really play out if you don't believe me, which is fair? This back door makes a great example. So in the cut that happens in here, basically we have the cutout. Now I'm going to eliminate this frame on the outside. Don't pay attention to the outside frame. The inside frame is supposed to fit within the wall, and the door sits within that frame. Now, that means that there are the cuts for the door, then there's two sides that are being cut for the frame for the door, and then there's two sides for the door, right? So that's a lot of cuts stacked together. Now, what I learned in my measurements is that one, the kerf of the laser is finer than I expected, which is awesome. I don't know, what is it? It's maybe 1500, 0.15. That's 15 hundredths, right? Or 20 hundredths, 0.2. It's in that range, but that's perfect because that's pretty much what I calculated or better. However, small errors in the design of the thicknesses of the pieces started to stack up, and there's actually maybe a 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter gap. Actually, wait a minute, it's a 1.4 millimeter gap between the frame and the actual wall, and that it's noticeable. It's when I look at it, this is not centered. There's a big gap on that side of the door. So I need to go in and adjust some of these dimensions, and so part of the multiple hours I spent deconstructing this is how, first of all, figuring out what went wrong, then trying to assess whether the errors are, is that the design error? Is it me not accounting for the laser cutting? Is it, something like that? And so I had to piece all those little things together to figure it out because that affected things. Well, this door was affected. Inserts for the windows can be affected by that. So there's a lot of areas where that's either a problem or could be a problem. So I need to go back and check all of these and get them right so that, when I assemble everything, that's when I'll cast it and I won't have to worry about that ever again. And so that's that was a journey. I won't kid you. That was an unexpected journey. Oh my gosh! And Frodo was with me. Well, I guess it would be Bilbo, right? I could go on quite a bit actually. Like I want to change these sides of these braces, these pilasters, make them half as thick as they are, and then carry them all the way to the back. Because maybe if you notice, the arch, the decorative arch trim actually goes behind this, and originally I thought, oh, that'll be fine, and when I look at it, I'm like, no, it's not fine, it doesn't work. So I've already changed those to go back to the wall, and I've got room to space it, so that's okay. So these are all the kinds of things that I discovered during the test build, but also coming away from it thinking, oh wow, it's so nice to see it come together and to know that the path I've been on is going to work, and I think it's going to match my vision for really interesting detail that it has a nice aesthetic feel and is playable. Just to give you, whoops, I almost forgot. So here is the elf archer that is my image when I'm doing the designing, and at some point I have to paint him to match painted buildings, so he will get a paint job at some point. But seeing him up against the rails is kind of interesting because at first I thought, oh, they look too short. Problem is, he's standing on a pedestal in essence, so he's already lifted up high. Second problem is, I didn't assemble the rails properly. They're actually supposed to be lifted off of the floor by, I don't know, maybe 2 millimeters, I think. And then there's a handrail that will go on top. And these I just popped in as holders, placeholders, but these will get slightly larger, and they're going to be cut from styrene rod. I've already got that in, so but it was after I did the test build. So actually this is going to come up a little bit. It's going to be a nice little gap underneath there, and then actually it's going to fit him almost perfectly. So the planning is working. The design, I think, is really solid, and once I add some elements, right, to tie some of these things in, I think then it's gonna really come together. It's been a journey to get to this point, but I feel like it's yet another milestone. There's another stone in the path that I get to walk by and say, whew, okay, let's keep going. So anyway, I've gone on too long. Maybe I'll edit some of this out, but that gives you a look at the test build of the first elf building. So hopefully you enjoyed that tour of the building and all of its nuances. You know, I expect a few people to maybe suggest I don't need to be quite so finicky about some of those tiny measurements, but you know, of course, this building is unpainted as well, and so those gaps, you know, if they're set against a very bright background, are going to show a lot more. And certainly, learning about those dimensions in terms of, say, the stair height are pretty important. So, while it took me a few hours to sort of deconstruct it, you know, and I had like a whole page of notes, it's been fruitful. And when I put the next series of pieces together, I feel pretty good that I'll have them spot on. So, hopefully, you will come back and see that next building because, you know, wait, what? It's October. It's October. So stick around for October because it's a power month for me for videos. 2 videos a week. This one drops on a Tuesday, and last week I had 2, and this week I'll have 2, and that will happen for the last 2 weeks of October. So plus a mini video for my patrons on Wednesdays, and hopefully you will stick around for October to see all those videos. And questions and comments down below, always welcome. And if you want to give me some help trying to get a pressure pot for casting all of these tiny little details, you can go over to, you can go over to Patreon and you can make a small pledge there, and it would help a lot. So now I can say, hopefully you will come back and see the next video in the Elf Town project, or any of the others, because you know that I will be back soon with another Terranscapes video. I stopped recording the end of this video and then I forgot. I wanted to ask you real quick whether you like the format of the way I shot this video. So the pictures, you know, instead of having a second cam, like a close cam. And the reason I've gone to this format is partly because I think I can control what I'm showing you better with a photograph than I can with the second cam. But it's, you know, and looking, I feel like, you know, a little bit of movement in the photos kind of adds a little interest. Plus, it allows me to focus on the key area that I want you to look at. So let me know what you think about close cam versus the photos. This format for the videos actually takes a little longer to edit, because I got to shoot the photos and then I got to blah, blah, blah. But I like it better. And so if that seems to be true for you as well, then I'm good with that and I'll keep doing it this way. But if I get a overwhelming response like, no, I like the second cam, then I'll go back to that as well. So I just wanted to ask you guys for that feedback, and hopefully you will put a little comment down below to let me know.